Hello, hello. Hello, everybody. How's it going? A huge warm welcome. A warm welcome again to you all. I hope you're keeping well. This is week 2, day 2 of week 2. That's day 7 altogether. So huge well done to you all. I'm just going to be letting people in as they come in. I know it's week 2. I know you've been through so much so far, but we've got even more in store for you guys as well. So remember, as we begin with all sessions, let me just make sure my mic is okay. You can hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay, or if there's some feedback. Is there some feedback? How's it going now? Brilliant. Good stuff. Okay, brilliant. Just a reminder to everybody to always be engaged. Remember what we said about fast. I just want to drill it into your minds, okay, guys? Fast, when we're talking about fast, we're meaning to learn fast, right? Can anybody give me one of the acronyms in the chat? What do they mean? Give me an F or A, S or a T. What do they mean? Brilliant. Okay, Jamil's in the building. Anybody else? Give me what in the chat. Just give me one of the acronyms. Want to make sure that you're awake. Okay. Okay. F for forget. Brilliant. A is for active. Wow. Your teamwork. Amazing. S is for state. Right. What state are you in? And T is teach. Right. Whatever you're learning over here, I want you to. The best way, the Feynman technique. Learn it, then teach it. Right. Forget what you think you know about Legal 101, because we've got an expert today. We've got a brilliant expert today. Ishaq, brilliant. Thank you so much. Let me just admit these people in. A huge warm welcome again. Welcome to you, man. Yeah, everyone's coming in slowly. So Reina has volunteered her time today. Thank you so very much. She's a five-star rated consultant solicitor, advising specifically startups. She is also a fellow mentor on the Founders and Mentors program that I spoke to you about. Remember, Simon? And obviously, Reina's focus is on startups, scale-ups, creatives, and internationals. So a lot of you are in Dubai or kind of, Lebanon or India. A lot of you are in different countries. So it'll be interesting for you to understand what it takes to set up a company here in the UK and the different legal structures and legal implications of being a startup, right? It's always like we mentioned, the tax man's always going to come for you. So is the law, okay? Cool. Remember, any questions that you have, feel free to unmute yourselves. I do give this reminder before. There is no real obligation, but it makes a much more of an interactive experience if you show your faces as well, right? Just like I'm showing my face, and just like Reina is as well. It'd be really good to see as many faces as possible if you're happy with that. And if everything's good, I'm gonna hand over to our illustrious guest today, the one, the only, Reina. There we go. Let me just give you a little applause before we get right in. There you go. Emoji reacts, everybody. Give us your emojis. I'm going to walk us through a few basics today. And any questions, I'll ask on your behalf, and you can ask as well in the chat or unmute yourself. Over to you, Reina.
Hello, students. Welcome, and I'm glad that you've started this journey of entrepreneurship, which can be very exciting. I started my journey around 12 years ago, I would say, prior to which I was head of legal with a multinational broadcaster called ZTV. I helped them to expand into Europe and various countries and was in charge of coordinating with territories around the world. And then the recession hit, and I set up my own company because a lot of people were being made redundant and starting up as startups and not having a clue or being too scared to use lawyers. And our motto is literally prevention is better than cure, because if you have your foundations in place, there's less risk of failing. And in the first 2 years, most startups fail because they don't seek that help that they really need to have their foundations in place. Now, when I say foundations, what I mean is as a startup, you can decide, okay, I want to be a sole trader, which means I don't need a limited company. It's just me. and providing my services or selling my products to a person or another business. So, for example, I might sell my services as a lawyer to a business, which would mean I'm doing B2B sales, business to business sales. Or I may sell my services to an individual like yourself. Say your parent wants to move to the UK and they're looking for different types of visas. They could move under, be it a Tech Nation Global Talent Visa, or they have an established business overseas in India and they want to expand that into the UK. So that would be advising an individual, perhaps. So that would be B2C, which is business to consumer. Now, to start up a business, you need to decide if you want to be a sole trader, a partnership, or a limited company. As I mentioned, the sole trader is direct to consumer. A partnership is when you are tying up with another person, maybe a friend or another business person, and you want to set up a structure like a partnership. And a limited company would be where you have limited liability, which would be advised if you want to grow your business to a higher level, purely because if something goes wrong, you are not personally liable for that. It would be the company that would be liable, and the risk is much lower. However, to set up the limited company, you need to have certain obligations. So, for example, you'll need to file annual returns every year, which says, who are the shareholders, who is the person of significant control behind the business, who are the directors, etc. If you don't know the meaning of shareholders, say a company has 100 shares issued. Of them, maybe you are, two shareholders of 50 shares each. So you own 50% of the company each. That's in simple terms. I hope you're taking down notes and asking questions at the end if you didn't understand anything. A limited company would also have things like insurance, and you can do that as a sole trader as well. Things like professional indemnity insurance. So if things go wrong, the insurance pays out and not you personally. Um, there are other types of insurance which are employers liability insurance if you're hiring staff, public liability insurance. Say you're a film crew and you're filming in public and somebody trips over wires and falls, and then they want to sue you for the fact that you were negligent in keeping those wires around, for example. And so these are the types of structures which accountants can also help you with. We have a one-stop shop. We are listed on the UK government's Inward Investment Directory as advisors. So we can connect you with accountants on our panel to set up these companies as well once you're ready, if you're a business owner. And once you've set up the company, obviously the tax implications would mean you need to decide, do I need to be VAT registered, which is VAT, value added tax? And that again is a further cost because you've got to file returns for VAT, but may not be necessary if you're having income or a turnover of under maybe 80 or 90,000 pounds. So as a startup, you may say, I don't want to register for VAT, which means when you invoice a client, you don't have to invoice them the extra VAT element. So the invoice will be a bit cheaper for the client to pay and may be attractive if you're selling your services to startups like we are. So that's about setting up the company. The second stage would be the contracts you might need in place. Now, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm doing business with my friend, so I don't need a co-founders agreement. I don't need a shareholders agreement. I trust this person, and everything's going well." You've both decided maybe that okay, the business needs maybe £5,000 to start. We'll need this much for marketing. We'll have a business plan. We'll need this much for other services, maybe buying computers, etc. And you put in that money and you start the business, and then 6 months down the line you have a disagreement and you decide, no, I don't want to work with this best friend anymore, and there's nothing to explain what you're going to do with what you formed so far. Who's going to own what? Who's put in the money? Who's going to take out the money? How it's going to work? So we would always advise having a shareholders agreement in place as the starting point if you are working with someone else. If you're the only shareholder of the business, then that becomes easier. All you need to do is then think of having an agreement with your customers. The agreement would be just any terms and conditions about the product you're selling or the service you're selling. What happens if things go wrong? How can they terminate the contract? How much will you be charging them? What will you provide within that cost? and just clarity on how the relationship would work. And you even have force majeure clauses. Force majeure means that you're not responsible if something goes wrong, which is out of your control, which is, say, an act of God, be it a war or weather issues. For example, if you have a business, a holiday business of camping, you may say, oh, weather issues means I cannot then hold this event or put up this camping site because it's pouring cats and dogs. And there would be a clause there saying what happens in such case to the money you've paid them. Would that money be refunded? Would it be kept as credit for another event, etc.? So that's a little bit about terms and conditions of contracts. You could have a choice of putting these terms and conditions on your website at the bottom, or you could ideally get the client to sign on the terms. You could have standard terms like a builder and then just have a schedule at the side giving the specific terms relating to that particular project. And the schedule changes with every new client, but the standard terms remain the same. So that becomes a bit more cost effective when you're using a lawyer rather than drafting or asking a lawyer to draft you new terms each and every time. And that's how we can help our clients as well. So that was terms and conditions. Each website in the UK would also need a privacy and a cookie policy at the bottom, which can be fairly standard as well. It's how you use the cookies that you've gathered when somebody gets onto your website, and what you're going to do with the data you've collected of people who are on your website, maybe filling in information relating to themselves, their phone numbers, etc., their email addresses. This data protection is very important. So every company needs to also register with the Information Commissioner's Office for this data to be kept securely. And if you lose customer data, as you may have heard in the news, you're supposed to report it in instantly. And sometimes there are big fines as well. So you have to be really careful with that data, especially if you're a UK company outsourcing nowadays to India or other countries. And if you're not assured that the person you're outsourcing all this sensitive data to, say it could well be medical data or data about young children, you've got to be really careful because you could be hit with great fines if those people in those countries where regulations are not that stringent then decide to sell that data to third parties, for example. So that's about data protection, the privacy policy, the cookie policy at the bottom of your website. If you're a limited company in the UK, you're supposed to mention the name of your company and the address and maybe the company number at the bottom of the website so people know whom they're dealing with. And finally, the most important thing is your brand. I mean, when you go to McDonald's or Burger King or whatever, you sort of recognize that brand and you say, I'm willing to pay a premium maybe because I know that Burger King is good. So similarly, once you spend a lot of money on, marketing and getting sales through, and you have a unique brand or a logo, you don't want your competitor to actually piggyback on all the work you've done and use that same brand to get your clients or to steal your clients away. So what is recommended is to register your brand, which is called a trademark. That is your intellectual property. Now that trademark will then, if you're selling your business, say you've made millions and you want to sell it, the value of the business goes up because of the trademark and the goodwill attached to it. So there's actually a monetary or money value to that trademark. So it's very useful to actually register your trademark. We help companies to register their trademark in the UK. And once that's done, if they want to then expand to other countries, you can then register it in other countries. There's various protocols like the WIPO Madrid protocol, which helps you register in many countries based on your base mark. So say your UK is your base mark, you can then register in Europe and rest of the world as well, which is a bit more cost effective than doing it individually in individual countries. That's because these countries have treaties and deals with each other to make it simpler. So that's about the trademark. There are other types of intellectual property you may have heard of. One of them is patents. So patents are usually used for inventions. And we have people in our team who can help with patents registering. There may be designs. You may have designed a particular style of handbag, for example, and you want to register the design. Another type of intellectual property is copyright. Say you're an author and you've written a book, you own copyright instantly once you've written that book. But how do you prove that you've written that book and you've not copied it from someone else? So you basically can maybe email the script to yourself, and then it's a record, or you can register the copyright of the script with organizations which are informal organizations as well. But unlike a trademark, as far as I know, there's no formal government organization you register your copyright with. So that's a little bit, I know it's a lot to take in. That's a little bit in terms of the basic legal foundations you need to keep in mind. As a recap, it is setting up your structure, whether it's a company, sole trader, partnership. It's about terms and conditions with your business partners, with your suppliers, and with your customers or clients, be they B2B or B2C. It's about data protection and registering with the Information Commissioner's Office and holding client data securely. And obviously, if you have international staff coming into your business, you'll have to look at doing visas, getting a sponsor license for your business, and reporting to the Home Office every time somebody who's an international on a visa, a tier 2 visa, starts with your company and leaves your company. So you have a reporting officer to do that as well. And you do have inspections from the Home Office. So you sometimes have people, as you hear in the news, raids being conducted and illegal immigrants being found who are working there. Even as a student, if you come to the UK, we can help with things like student visas, where you're allowed to work for up to 20 hours elsewhere. But then if you breach those conditions as well, there are implications. I'm happy to open the floor up to any questions, be it about the law in the UK. We also help people who are in the UK who need help in India. I'm a dual qualified solicitor, and I work closely with partners in India. So businesses that want to expand into India, people from India that want to move to the UK as businesses or individuals, or people with global talent, for example, or innovative ideas. We can help with all of that. So yes, you can ask me questions about the law, or you can ask me questions about my journey as a business owner, how I started, how I grew my business, and how I managed to get all those 5-star testimonials. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so very much. I mean, I really, really appreciate it. Loads and loads of benefit and valuable advice over there, talking about practical implications of setting up something that we go through, one of the first modules actually when it comes to the summer program that we teach as well, which is what are the different structures, talking about some of the benefits of maybe limited company versus a sole trader. We touched on a little bit about that. So would love to ask a few questions to everyone and also get our expert Reina her thoughts on that as well. But if there are any questions thus far, as Reina mentioned, on what has already been spoken about when it comes to law, when it comes to the legal side structure, when it comes to structure of companies, terms and conditions, all this data stuff, feel free to ask any questions. Well, it's staff as well, like bringing in staff from abroad. What's the reporting officer? Any questions? Put them in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself. If not, I'm going to ask a few questions. I'll give a few moments for everyone to do so while I play a little. No, there's no waiting. What do you call it? Elevator music or anything like that. But let's see. Everyone got any questions? Okay, we've got a few people putting them into the chat. Anything that comes to your mind in terms of your own business idea, you can feel free to unmute and say, look, I've got this business, I've got a marketing agency. What are the legal implications? What are the things I should be worrying about as I'm looking to expand my offering? Feel free to. Feel free. Remember, every time I want you to make your business proposition very refined, okay? Like a sentence or two, however it is. Cool. Charlotte's typing. I'm going to give a few moments, if that's okay, Reina, for them to start typing up. And I've got a few questions for you, Reina, while we're doing it. So in terms of, I'll do it 1 second. In terms of structure, Reina, if you don't mind, the question is, for a startup, what is the ideal structure? Where should every startup start as a sole trader, or can they go straight into limited company? And then once they're able to, should all startups go into public, kind of become a public entity, become a PLC essentially, or do you see that the limited company, LTD is the best for startups?
So just to clarify, the difference between a private limited company. So I would say a private limited company, because public limited is typically for those that are listed on the stock markets and, really larger companies. I would say it also depends on your budgets. I mean, if you're going to be a really micro hobby business, then you could be a sole trader for the rest of your life. But if like you're selling on eBay or something. But if you're really going to grow to the next level, have staff, etc., or even if you don't have staff and you're the only person in the business, you are able to afford the accountant's fees for the annual returns and accounts, which would be a couple of £100 a year, which are compulsory. You can then have less liability, and it would still be advisable to be a limited company because it looks more professional, and it may be well worth it. If you're going to earn maybe tens of thousands of pounds at least, it may be still worth being a limited company. I also didn't mention something when you mentioned a marketing company. I wanted to say there are certain regulations in the UK about marketing as well, which are the CAP code and the BCAP code. So you cannot make claims which are false, for example. There's lots of regulations also around sale of certain products which could be considered sensitive products, like health and safety products, or even if you're, say, advertising on television, uh, products which are high in sugar, high in fat, high in salt, or alcohol, etc. There's certain rules about what can be advertised when and how. So you have to keep that in mind. And we can also advise on marketing regulations, but um, you cannot just get away with lying about your product and, for example, saying, oh, this product is, you just apply one drop and it's going to give you a full shock of hair from being bald, and it doesn't, right? So there's trading standards that will clamp down on you as well.
Well, that puts us perfectly into a segue into Ishal's question, actually. So Ishal is asking, if you want to sell homemade skincare products and things like homemade body scrubs, is there anything special I have to put into my products? For example, body scrubs and lip balms or hair oils by law. Are there any implications for that, for those type of products, skin and healthcare?
To do with healthcare, especially if you're ingesting it, it's even more dangerous, obviously. But skin products can be, we've heard of horror stories where people have applied skin products and then burnt their faces and whatnot. So yes, there is an organization called MHRA as well, and there's trading standards. So it will all depend on the type of product and what ingredients they contain. If they're all natural ingredients like honey and lemon, etc., it might be easier. But if they've got chemicals and dangerous, or lead or toxins, etc., then obviously you've got to be very careful.
Okay, interesting. We had a discussion in a previous kind of 2 week session that I did. One of the students wanted to create home care products that help with eczema, and the whole question was around testing. How do you test this? Is it ethical? Are there any? And that's a very long discussion, isn't it, Reina, around testing, animal testing, and going through various kind of phases of testing and stuff like that. So those would come with its own complications, I assume, isn't it, Reina?
Yes, I
Testing.
mean, it all depends again on the ingredients and the budget the client has. I mean, you can do basic testing, but you've got to do the bare minimum that the law requires. And I would say, with regard to any product, it's also to get a minimum viable proposition, as you say, in terms of, is somebody going to buy your product? Why would you spend loads of money in creating something that nobody wants to buy? So the first step is really figuring out, having a business plan, figuring out your competitors, what is their pricing, what's their route to market, how successful have they been, and is that something you want to be different from and have a USP? Because if you're not different, then why would people buy from you unless you've got a load of money into marketing, which not many young people would have, I would think. We do have a link at the bottom of our website, Bizlaw UK, which helps with startup loans for startups which are in the UK, if you fulfill certain criteria, because it's very difficult for startups to get loans without having to actually have collateral, like maybe your own property or something, which not many people would want to have as collateral for the loan.
Very interesting. So taking out loans based on this collateral, not yet. Majority of us don't have properties even as adults in order to kind of pitch against or put against a loan. So very, very good points there, as well as the fact that this whole idea about de-risking yourself, so your legal implications. So actually, I would ask that as a question, actually, before we go into our friend's question, which is brilliant. The question is, the legal side be something that we think about in ideation, like early on, and obviously maybe it's both, and then once we've got a prototype, then we think about the commercial legal implications. So how much should law and the legal side be front of mind for entrepreneurs when they're ideating and building
I
product?
think I think it would be right from ideation stage, because if you've got a brilliant idea and somebody steals that idea, you'd be in trouble, right? So maybe, have an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement or confidentiality agreement, to ensure that your idea is not taken by someone else, and have a very detailed ideation plan. So otherwise, so many people can say, "Oh, I had that idea as well." That would really be your intellectual property right from day one. And then the contract would be the NDA. That would be a start. And then, if, for example, you're working with maybe mentors who are giving you advice for payment, you would have contracts with them, things like that. So that would be right from day one then.
Oh, really, really interesting. I do want to touch on this more, but I want to hear from Arfan. But the question that came to my mind was ideas, ideas, and intellectual property. So that's one thing I wanted to kind of touch on. But before that, I really want to make sure that Arfan's question is heard. And by the way, please do look into it. Right, non-disclosure agreement, how you can sign something very simple and make it, essentially safeguard your idea. So the question is from Arfan. Right now, I'm having a graphic design agency, but since I'm just starting out, is it necessary to have something like a license, right, in order to have a graphic design agency? What are the disadvantages, advantages of starting a business without a license? Also, can you tell me a little bit more about trademark?
A graphic design agency, I'm not sure what sort of license you're referring to. You'd have to set up your company, obviously, and you'd have a company house number if you've set up a limited company. If you're trading as a sole trader, it's different. You would then have to have contracts with your clients and with regard to your trademark, it would be your logo. Say you name your graphic designs company, uh, whatever, Swiggy, for example, the name of the, and you might want to register that. You'd probably need someone like me, or do Google searches to see if there's something similar out there in the market already, and then decide, oh, actually I won't use that brand name because it's already being used by someone else, and I could get into trouble if I copy that, and they would then tell me to shut down my company or to change the brand after I've started. So it's better to have something unique. It's always easier to register something that's not just lay terms, like saying, I like coffee, for example. That's not a brand, right? So you've got to register something that's a bit more unique. It's easier to register a logo than it is to register word marks. There are different classes for goods and for services. So my mine would be a service because it's a consultancy. But if you're selling skincare products, that would be goods. So you'd need somebody to guide you if you can't do it yourself, obviously, in terms of which classes would apply to your product or your service when you're registering the mark. And it takes around 4 months before you actually get the mark registered. But it's well worth the investment, because you will then get a trademark for 10 years before you have to renew it, and nobody else can use your mark. If you don't register your trademark and you just carry on using the brand Swiggy anyway, and then somebody else starts using the same brand in a similar type of business, there still can be a claim for passing off, but that's very much more difficult, because you've got to actually get evidence and witnesses to say that they went to that person instead of you because they were confused and they thought it was your brand or their brand.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. Answer there. Just another one. Oh yeah, and on that follow-up question was an initial thought around ideas, Reina, and whether they hold any intellectual property. As in, can I go to the Office of Intellectual Property and just submit an idea as long as I've got a detailed kind of idea, for example, on Ideas Nest, maybe a business plan. What level does my idea has to be instantiated to, or what level do I have to have what level of detail do I have to have in order to get a claim for my idea?
I would say it has to be quite detailed. I mean, if it's something really vague, then you can't really register it with the IPO, at least. So yes, if it's a patent, it's different. So then we'd have patent experts to explore whether that particular invention of yours is something that can be registered, for example. And you also get things like grants. I was talking about, if you're very innovative, your product, and it's very tech savvy, for example, and going to help the world, then you could even get grants rather than loans to develop that into the next level. And we do have experts who can, evaluate whether you are entitled to grants.
Perfect, perfect. I just muted myself just to make sure the audio is good. The other question that we have, thank you so much, Raina, for that. That's something that I get very, very nerdy on sometimes. It's like, what's the threshold between something that's just an idea which isn't valuable, and then something that suddenly becomes unique and something that does deserve to, does have credibility within itself, has merit to warrant a patent, for example. So very interesting discussion around that. So Alfia is mentioning she has a company that sells bracelets, right? And she wants to know what kind of terms and conditions should she add to her kind of, the company website. Is there any kind of maybe anti-slavery laws, any kind of making sure that there's transparency? And I guess maybe there's some people that are interested in drop shipping as well. So drop shipping and e-commerce. So these two, we want to know what kind of what kind of terms and conditions should they be putting on their website, maybe.
So if you're using platforms like Shopify, for example, which I established, or Amazon, there may be standard terms and conditions that you could just tweak to serve your purpose. And all these standard clauses will be there in them already. So you don't need to worry too much. You'll just need to put the commercial terms in terms of, how you want to play it, or for example, minimum orders or cost or whatever else you might want to put in. Because bracelets are much simpler in terms of risk than maybe selling cosmetics. Um, and the value of each bracelet is probably, I'm guessing, unless it's a diamond bracelet, no more than maybe £5 or £10. It's low value risk as well. So I mean, I'm just giving general advice, but if you need specific advice, you can reach out to me. You just Google Bizlaw UK. We've got an email address, we've got a WhatsApp. But if you're under the age of 18, obviously, a parent would have to be owning the company. So I'm not sure what age she is.
Yeah, you'd have to get a parent to be the representative at least, and maybe you could be in the background, but then there has to be parent involvement when you are registering your company, right? So that's
Even the bank account, I think.
yeah.
I'm not sure if children can,
Yeah,
get money.
there is a go. Yeah, you can't have a business bank account. I don't think, isn't it, Raina? Just a Go Henry in the UK. We've got something called Go Henry, which is when you're below 17. I think you can have a Go Henry
Yeah.
account. That's interesting. Okay, brilliant. So the question was as well in terms of setting up. Oh yeah, some people are based in Dubai or kind of India or different countries. Is it possible for them, if they are in these other countries, to set up a company in the UK? And do they have to? Would they have to come into the UK? How much would they have to come into the UK in order to set up, or is it something that they can do remotely?
So are they just planning to set up the company here and work there, or are they planning to actually move to the UK? That's the question.
I
And
don't
what
know.
is what? So
Yeah.
they'll have to ask that specific question. What is the reason they want to set up the company in the UK in the first place? Because we have
Mm,
sometimes inquiries from people from Pakistan, etc. They just set up a random company and they have no clue as to what's going on, what their responsibilities are with Companies House. They set up this random company and then they say, oh, it's because of Amazon, or we don't have a PayPal system in Pakistan, so we've set this up, and now Companies House has shut us down, and we've got a bank account with money in it. What do we do? How do we get that back? So that's why I say the foundations are important. It's not
mm.
just anybody just come set up a company and be a fly by night operator. Do it properly, do it professionally, and then don't get into trouble. If you've not done it correctly, you stand to lose.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting stuff. There was one before I mentioned Amar's question. There was one interesting student that asked the question around. I've heard about setting up in Guernsey or Isle of Man or various different space places in the UK that is considered to be in the UK where the tax is much more favourable. Is that possible for any person to do in terms of set up the the offices, or is that something that is maybe much more complicated. I think that the question was very high level, so it was around whether this is something that everybody can do, like set up in the Isle of Man or Guernsey, because they've heard some people that want to save on tax do that instead of setting up in for example, in London or Nottingham or Birmingham.
Yes, these are called tax havens, but they're obviously you need to have a tax advisor. We have tax advisors who can help with whether it's something worth doing. And nowadays there's anti-money laundering checks and there's KYC, know your client, etc. So you can't escape too much. Even like in the past, people would set up companies and buy properties, and it was some black money from overseas that was being used. And now all that has to be seen. Source of funds has to be seen, where the money's coming from, what sort of business it is, and it all catches up with you. So it's better to do it properly with a professional advisor.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so very much. The question here from Amir: as a barber, do you need a barber license in this country to open a barber shop? I know that in America you need a barber license. So is that the same over here? It's quite a niche question, but if you've got any shed any light on that, Reina.
I definitely think trading standards would be sort of aware or involved to some extent. I mean, it is specific, so I'll have to check that out for you. You can reach out to me privately about this question. But with regard to the barber shop, obviously you'll have to lease the shop. We have conveyancers who can help you to lease the shop, or buy the shop, or whatever you may need for that purpose. And then it's not high risk, I would say, anyway, in terms of barbering. But if, for example, if you were saying it's laser fat removal or something which is more dangerous, then definitely it would be much more regulated.
Yeah, brilliant. As long as you keep those barber equipment clean, right, and then you don't take it out on your customer that they've been cheating on the barber and going to another one, like it's quite popular on social media, right? When somebody cheats on a barber, then they they do them dirty. So brilliant question. We've got one from Isaac. Feel free to unmute, my man. I'm just going to give you the mic now. Oh, okay. You don't have a question. It just popped up. No worries. That's all good. Brilliant. Okay, cool. So if that's okay, I'm going to go back. There's some initial questions. Feel free to keep them coming in the chat. But there's some questions that I wanted to put in, which were, yes. Okay. So what would you mentioned reporting officer right near the end, Reina? Is that relating to so that we know that we have to have an ICO, somebody that looks after, that is in charge of the data? What was the reporting officer? Maybe for myself, actually, I think I might have missed out on that, but for everyone else's benefit as well, the importance of a reporting officer and what do they do?
I was talking about the sponsor license responsibilities, the authorizing officer and the level 1 user, where you report into the Home Office perhaps about staff who have left. Because if you've hired somebody from, say, India on a tier 2 visa, and then they've left the company and you don't inform anybody and they just disappear, nobody knows where they are, then it would be the responsibility of the company.
I see. Very, very. Thank you for the clarification. A question we have is relating to perfume, right? Perfume, and I assume, Mohammed, this is made in the UK. So, about exporting products like perfumes that are made in the UK, what are the legal requirements or rules for them? And I think this, Reina, you already touched a little bit on about beauty products, but let us know if there's anything that would be added on if we export these abroad.
Yes, there would be certain regulations, import-export regulations, which is a specific area where certain forms need to be filled, etc. And we can, connect you to people we know who might be able to help with that.
Okay, brilliant. I just put that into the chat that there are specific sets of export and import regulations to bear in mind. Okay, 2 questions. Is there any cheap or free online selling platform? Yes, there's ones that are free. You can set up on eBay, you can set up on Amazon, you can set up on Etsy, you can set up on Big Cartel. Big Cartel allows you to set up your own store. Shopify also has a free trial. Also, there's WooCommerce, which is an e-commerce plugin for WordPress. And there's obviously Shopify is probably the most popular for people to go to, but that does come with a bit of a charge later on. if you're selling products, then yeah, you've got I think Big Cartel is the free one that I know about, Big Cartel. But yeah, it would be great to hear from anybody else. Anybody else has any other platforms? That was the question. And feel free. What else? Do you need anything when hiring people? Ooh, that's a employment law 101. We need to do another one, isn't it, Raina?
Before that, in terms of the online, you could probably even sell online from your own website. I would just
Mm,
put that in mind, because I'm sure these platforms take a commission, right? So, but then you need to use secure payment providers, so the credit card details are safe, like Stripe, etc. And see that you're using the right platforms there. With regard to employment law, yes, that's $100 question. But yes, the first step would be, obviously, you need to have some employment contract, or at least terms of hire with your employee. There are many different ways of employing people these days. You could subcontract, you could just hire them as to provide a service without actually putting them on your payroll, because that then doesn't trigger off the employment rights like it would otherwise. People could volunteer in your business for free up to a year, like maybe students with work experience requirements where you can't afford to pay them, but they still want work experience, not getting it elsewhere. Or you could basically have different arrangements as well, where, as I said, you provide a service to someone and then you subcontract that, so you have a contract between the subcontractor and yourself, but you don't trigger off the employment rights. Some employment rights trigger off quite early if it's discrimination and other things, but others, for unfair dismissal, trigger off after the person has been in the company for a couple of years, maybe 1 or 2 years. But typically, there is protection for redundancy. There's certain rules around consultation when you're making someone redundant, for example, or if there's dismissal, is it fair or is it unfair? If there's grievance procedures, disciplinary procedures, all these, as per the ACAS code, they need to be followed properly, because you could then get into trouble if you haven't. You might have insurance that protects you from claims if you've done something wrong. We have people who can help you with your HR. Of course, you're young students, but I'm saying if you were an established business with many staff, then that would kick in.
brilliant, brilliant. And just to bear in mind, some of the people here do have family businesses. Their fathers and mothers are already in an established business, so these entrepreneurs may be taking that business further in the future,
Okay.
which is amazing. So that's really good to hear for them as well. So the question was around drop shipping. Drop shipping, I'll just quickly explain it, and then also be an interesting question that came from that, which is drop shipping is essentially you don't hold the stock, you're connecting a supplier to a purchaser. Okay, so you just have a storefront, and you've got, maybe typically this is what happens. Typical example: I set up an Amazon store, I set up a website actually on Shopify, and I'm selling products like, maybe example, this water bottle. I don't actually hold this water bottle. I just present a store. I get an order. Then I once I've got that order and I got that money in, then I'm going to use that money to then purchase from a supplier in Guangzhou, for example, in China. Then that supplier will send directly the cheaper bottle to not sorry, not cheaper, the original price, the supplier price of a bottle, to the customer. That's a typical example of drop shipping. But the question that arises is, are the same legal implications for a drop shipper? Uh, do they hold for the e-commerce? If I were to have these products myself and sell them, or is there some sort of a mitigation of kind of liability if I were to be a drop shipper and say, look, it was not my issue. There were some chemicals on this bottle that were in China, and my agreement was with the Chinese wholesalers and suppliers to make sure that everything's clean, and it's their fault. Go chase them, don't chase me. So that was one of the questions.
No, I think there would be liability, because everyone would use that excuse otherwise, right? Because I don't know what sort of agreements they have with the person in China, what sort of due diligence they've done with that company in China. I mean, if the reviews everywhere are saying that these products are dodgy, and then you've still decided to go ahead and sell them here, and making false claims saying that they are like the cat's whiskers and the best product in the world, and they actually, dodgy products, then you would be liable.
Okay, very interesting. I guess when there's like a one-off or something, like all products are going well, but then this one kind of was toxic, or happened to have something negative, kind of chemicals or corrosive elements on there, then still you probably would be liable, isn't it, even for the
That's where
off chance?
your yeah, that's where your insurance might protect you as well.
Ah,
Where you were, just you didn't
perfect,
expect it to happen and it suddenly happens and
perfect,
it wasn't deliberate.
perfect. Okay, so also the employment question. I see. Okay, Isak, can you please mention the employment question that you Uh, oh yeah. So it's like your employment, the implications of employment. That is an entirely new um, thing, and Raina did mention a few bits about that, but that would take that employment law would be its own kind of workshop in terms of how do you onboard, what tax breaks you can get from kind of employing, and this kind of subsidies as well, other things that come into that, but. I'm more than happy to give you very basic stuff. I'm not a lawyer, but I did do my accountancy, so I've got a few things what you can talk about. But it's like I had another question, which was selling app takes a. Okay, so you're selling an app that takes a percentage. Payment processors take a percentage. Okay, selling apps take a percentage. Payment processors take a percentage. Back, everyone takes a percentage. It is very hard to sell certain things online. Yes, very, very true. The system is taking most of your money, and that is why Raina suggested to have your own website rather than going on Amazon, because they do take a big chunk of your money. But then it's up to you. There's obviously a pro and a con with each one, right? With Amazon, for example, print on demand. I don't even have to have any inventory. If I want to sell a book, I can ask Amazon to print it for me and send it off. That's de-risking it from my side, but I'm going to be giving a huge chunk of my profits over to Jeff Bezos, Mr. Jeffrey Bezos, right? Jeffrey Bezos. Okay. Also, the employment. Is there a specific question about employment that you have? It's like, feel free to put that into the chat. If not, I think Reina did give a very good outline of the basic things to think about when it comes to employment law, and I can definitely go over that with you afterwards as well. Cool. Any other questions? Feel free to chat. And this has been a super insightful session, way beyond what I expected, because it is indeed very a very important topic. And like Reina mentioned, it should be not something that we think about as an afterthought. It should be there from the beginning of when you're ideating. Is this something, you talk about your NDA, your non-disclosure agreement, making sure that your idea is protected, making sure that you're doing things like patents. Remember when people are pitching to Dragon's Den or they're pitching on Shark Tank, one of the first things the sharks mentioned or the dragons mentioned, have you got a patent on this, in a cool American accent? Have you got a patent? So think about that. Very interesting stuff. Think about your structures as well. You are by default, if you're selling online or whatever it is, you are by default, I assume, Reina, we are all sole traders, unless we then apply for becoming a limited company. We go on company's house, we put in our various documents, the shareholders agreements, and all these kind of memorandums and articles and stuff of association, and then we get to that beautiful limited liability and the benefits of that, isn't it, Irina? But cool. Let me just unmute yourself. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hear
To,
you.
to set up
Perfect.
to set up the company, you don't need the shareholders agreement, but you have memorandum and articles of association. You can choose the generic ones, which is easier, or you can have bespoke ones, which you probably need to pay someone to do for you.
Perfect. Thank you so very much. Yes. Okay. So even simpler than I mentioned, just the memorandum and the articles, which is brilliant. Okay. With employment, can you pass on some freelancing service work to other people? Ah, okay. I like this question. It's like I love this. So it's almost like it's the arbitrage model, Raina, that yeah, it's like it's asking about. With employment, can you just pass on some freelancing service work to other people and pay them less than what you're receiving? Can I do that without doing anything on the legal side? So what does that mean in terms of the typical model, right? Arbitrage. So getting somebody on Fiverr to do your services. Is there any legal implications for that? And if
Again, I would suggest having something in writing, because if they mess up and then the ultimate client is not happy with you, you're taking the money, all right, but you're liable as well, right? How you've done and provided the services is your problem, but you're responsible if things go wrong. So see that you have proper insurance in place, even if it's something as simple as Hiscox or whatever. Depending on their type of business, get a quote and get that in place.
would that be indemnity insurance? What kind of insurance? Yeah,
Professional indemnity insurance, yes.
brilliant. Professional indemnity.
and
Very
and
good
that and
question.
that's not employment. If you say freelancer, then you're not an employee. An employee only kicks in when you are on their payroll and you're getting a PAYE slip every month. And if you have a limited company, you can even save tax by putting some of your profits into, I think, up to 60,000 a year, into a director's pension, where the company can put that money into your personal account for you to use or invest, and you don't then pay the tax on that amount, provided you have enough, in terms of living and your lifestyle, and if you need to take out a salary. So you need the tax advisor to guide you on that, or the an independent financial advisor. We do have both of these people on our team as experts.
Oh, this has been absolutely brilliant for me. Just
You mute.
oh, sorry, I muted myself. So yeah, I was just gonna say this feels really real now. I hope it feels really real for you guys in terms of how we went from idea, went to kind of a little bit about kind of testing, and then we spoke about pitching, and now this is like as real as it gets, guys. Right? But no, we wanted to say a huge thank you to Reina. But before, I mean, we've taken more time than what kind of we mentioned. So thank you so very much, because there've been so many questions and so much discussion. This has been amazing for me, like really helpful. Any questions? I guess last question. Should we say, Reina? Any last questions? If not, we will be wrapping up and allowing Reina to return back to Bizlaw UK. Remember the website. Please to do take a look. It's just for yourself to realize what is available out there for your support. Don't go about this by yourselves. Okay, say that to you and your families as well. Those that are looking to set up in the UK or in India. Um, yeah, it's like the question around when I'm in direct contact with the employee and I teach them skills and I send them work. Just as Reina said, Ishaq, you this is not an employer. This is not an employer-employee relationship. This is a freelance relationship. And if you were to then give services, right, sell services, you are the one that is liable, right? Because you're the one who's selling to them. So there's no, I'm not really talking about phone, I'm talking about something like an agency where I'm in direct contact with the employee and I teach the skills and I send him the work. Oh, okay. So yeah. When you've employed, so maybe we didn't understand the question initially. So it's like you're as an agency, you're employing somebody. Then yeah, then yeah, as long as you're paying them, putting them on your payroll, it's called PAYE, pay as you earn, and you're giving them a salary. Then yeah, then all these employment laws kick in. You have to give them a what do you call it? Their rights, employment rights, and there's lots of things that are very basic. You can actually Google them. You can find them on the gov.uk website as well, isn't it, Raina? Any other thoughts in terms of what Ishaq should think about when he's looking to employ somebody? Is there a specific thing within that, Ishaq, in terms of what your questions are? So I just want to make sure that we're giving you as much value as possible here. Any specific things that you're worried about, Ishaq, when it comes to employing somebody? Feel free to put it into the chat, because I don't think there was anything specific there other than as only legal implications of that. It would be like any employment contract. You have to have a contract. Yeah, that's okay. Like once you start working yourselves, guys, you will see the process. So there's like an onboarding process. HR gets in touch. You have to have a lot in place, isn't it, Reina? Just speaking high level in order to make sure that we are not falling into any foul kind of play or conduct when we're talking about employment.
Yeah. There's
Perfect.
workers and there's employees, and yeah, and there's the ACAS website. And I wanted to mention that we also have a YouTube channel and a podcast. All the links at the bottom of our website. So if you're interested in seeing videos on useful topics, liking, sharing, rating, we would be happy for you to do that.
Brilliant. Remember, in this day and age, we're in a very, there is no excuse for not to be for not to be an absolute expert in the thing that you choose to be. Right, you can become an expert, and you've got everything at your fingertips. We haven't ever had this in the history, as far as I know, of mankind, to be able to have so much information on our fingertips, such that we can become experts in anything, right? So please do make the most of the resources that Reina has shared, and I will end. Let me just see if there's any other questions. There's a question from. Okay. Perfect. I think we've got all the questions, and I'm more than happy to talk a bit more about employment law if anyone wants to, and I can recap on that. But I just want to say a huge thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting you, and thank you so very much, Reina, for your time. And yeah, we're going to see each other